So, the deep power of breath work.
Yeah.
What do you feel people are truly seeking when they come for breath work? That's an interesting question that I always ask myself of my clients. What are they looking for? So, what's your experience of what they're looking for when they come for a breathwork session?
In the beginning, it seems as if they always come to be released from old wounds, old behaviors, hidden guilt, hidden shame. And they are looking for a kind of slowing down. They all are in a rat race in this world. And they sit there in my office and I speak to them. And they are really new to breathwork, they already get a little bit amazed when I start, after we have a little bit of a talk, when we do a small breathing meditation, and I have them close their eyes and go inside and feel what their body is feeling. And after 5 minutes or so, they open their eyes and oh, but that's amazing. That feels really good. And you are so attentive. And then they start to give me compliments. But it is something in the simply connecting the breath in a steady round rhythm, a little bit faster than they are used to, and supporting them to really take their breathing in through their nose, behind their foreheads, through the skull into the air, as if they are reaching for a connection, and then learning that they are opening themselves to get more energy. It's life's force. Then they blow the air out through their nose, but that energy stays in, and they start to feel that it's moving down. And then after a while, I will ask them, and they all know exactly till how far is your energy moving into the body. And they show me with their hands. It's like in my stomach, or it's just a little lower. And then while we are on the way that far again, the issue that is truly hidden underneath the first question starts to pop. I always have thought when we start to breathe in a circular movement, which is round, that what is not round, rounded up in life, will be swept up as if it's a turning water wheel with your breathing, and the wheel lifts up what you need to look at, what is not really round your life. And you get a chance to make it finish, to maybe first feel something to the end.
Right. So, why do you feel that the breath can reach places that talking alone sometimes cannot? When you think about talking therapy, or, like even, I always talk to my clients first, I interview them and stuff, but there's always this magic with the breath, right? What's your understanding or experience of that?
Our thinking mind is so filled up with messages that we have been getting and putting in there from the moment that we were born, and maybe even already before that time. And so my thinking mind is filled with all kinds of opinions, many of those negative. If we could talk our problem away, no one would have a problem. There would be peace in the world.
Absolutely.
When the breath starts to move and move life energy inside the body, it brings the material up that we are struggling with in our minds. It makes it tangible in the body. And that's where we reach in with our breathing.
Yeah. Okay. So, what have you come to understand over the years about the connection between breath, body, memory, and consciousness?
Breath, body, memory, and consciousness.
The connection.
I begin with memory. My experience with my own memory is that the moment that I live through a certain moment in my life, I talk about it afterwards, it already changes while I'm telling it. And so sometimes I have little flashes of memory from the war, for example. If it's true, like I have these little pictures, like a flash picture in my mind, I'm not so sure. And I was quite amazed by when I had a very clear memory of right after being born in a rebirthing session. Mm-hmm. And then my mom was still alive. And I told her about the interior of my parents' bedroom where I was born. And she said, but yeah, we changed it after that. How can you know? And I said, but I saw a picture, but it was only like one little moment, one little picture, and then nothing. But I have noticed in myself that I would tell you now, it's already changed by telling it. So memory, you see it when there is an accident happening. People tell about the accident to the police. They are all telling a different story. We all see something else. There has been research done. So memory is not our best way of looking back and then thinking we are right.
Yeah, I've had breathwork sessions where I can, like you said, image. I've even had a session where, and I've actually had a couple of times where I've gone back to my birth and experienced, I guess, with that question too, thinking about body. I've also actually had physical body sensations of my neck being in pain as I'm coming out of the womb, being handled by the doctor. So it's kind of interesting how, I guess, with the breath, there is that connection, our memories, our body, and also, I guess, consciousness at different levels. When someone has a, go on, sorry.
Yeah, I think there is something more. I think the moment that we do the connected breathing, it is as if the threshold that is underneath where our more precise memories are hidden is lowered by the connected breathing. There is a relaxation happening also mentally, physically, that we can reach more into that memory bank. Still, I'm not quite sure if all our memories are correct as we have them.
When someone has a strong emotional release, how do we know whether it is truly healing or simply just a powerful experience?
So the real release is the setting free of the life force that we start to feel. It's life's energy that we start to feel as a tangible, bubbling, streaming feeling inside our body. And if it goes hand in hand with an insight, and then the emotional release is about having been gone through fear and probably anger or irritation, and then sadness, and then the whole body starts to release those feelings by expressing them. In that moment, the integration is not taking place yet. The integration takes place in the moment that the breathing is calming down and there is peace and relaxation and not expression. So if I'm still angry and swinging my fists and making a lot of drama, that is not where the real integration is taking place. The integration is taking place when I physically feel that this is not doing anything, but that I let go of that emotional anger and feel that there is only a change in my experience in my inside, within me, not by the drama expression of it.
Yeah, and I like the way you said integration, because that's really important. And I guess after the charge or the energy of that emotion dissipates, then you can fully integrate.
Yeah.
So then that leads me on to the question, what is the difference between catharsis and integration?
There has been a whole period in the 70s and the early 80s where there were loads of therapy forms. They used the banging on a mattress, they used the screaming, they used the body to do exercises with the body that were so painful that you had to scream and cry. There was a lot of catharsis going on. Extremely expression in an extreme way.
I mean, I remember those days too, where, there was a lot of cathartic, processing and stuff like that. And something I've learned along the way, especially speaking to a lot of elders like yourself and a lot of pioneer breath workers, is that I think, the breath itself has its own power, right? And these days I find that even the most gentlest breathing process can still be like huge. Like people have massive changes and integration, and it doesn't always have to be cathartic. I guess some of on social media, I'm sure you've seen it too, a lot of these cathartic sort of breath work practitioners that create all this sort of drama and screaming and yelling. I don't know if it really has a place anymore. And I just think if we truly trust the breath itself, it'll take us to as deep as our subconscious will allow us to go, the gating system, in order for us to release and surrender and integrate fully and just release that charge that maybe that suppressed energy that we've been carrying from whatever. So I think it's really important that, especially with future breath workers, that they don't get caught up in a lot of that catharsis and that drama. I just find that it just keeps people stuck in that same, and also re-trauma as well sometimes. So I know as a breath worker myself, I don't really interject very much during the breathing cycle. I just allow my client to go through what they need to go through, and I just, support without too much, creating or pushing or prodding. I don't think that's important anymore. Like maybe the 70s people were a little bit different, I don't know.
When I go back to the way that Leonard Orr, all the sessions he gave me, he was guiding my breath in a way that was not aiming into catharsis. It was aiming into getting it in a circular movement, reaching completely up, moving completely down. But the way he was giving me his instructions about how I was breathing, they were so precise And when I was following his instructions, I finally stopped thinking about me. I was following the instructions, and what I got from that was that my breathing started to really roll by itself. And it was still reaching up, and it was still reaching down inside my body. And what it felt like, there was a moment where my physical energy and my energy body, like what I can feel sometimes like over here, were suddenly into one movement. And that felt like coming home to whom I am, the one you call Tilke. It's not her.
Got it. Thank you. How do we support people to stay connected with the body rather than becoming overwhelmed by the process?
By the breathing.
By the breathing, yeah.
By connecting the breath consciously every time, again and again and again. He did wonderful work, and he wrote about it in a way that it became so simple. He just said, keep your breathing. When you start to cry, you feel the tears running down your cheeks, but you keep breathing in a gentle, round rhythm. And then your emotion changes. You feel that that's happening, and you stay with it. And although you're staying with it, you keep breathing. So the breath is really meant also to be used as an inner mantra, but it's a physical mantra.
How long have you been doing breath work now? How many years?
I got my first session in 1978.
When you reflect back now, has your understanding of the breath become simpler or deeper over time?
Both.
Both.
Deeper in the sense of what you just said, that if the breathing is very quiet and even very private, but it's still circular and it is still done consciously and connectedly, but it is very fine and soft, the power in there can be enormous as well. And sometimes it is even more. The woman I saw the other day, this week, I worked only with her in that way for a good hour. And afterwards she said, I have never experienced really filling myself completely with me.
That's really nice.
And I was so happy. So the depth is about the understanding that the playing with the rhythm and the volume and the tempo is skill, but it's also much simpler because use the breath and then clear away the thoughts that in your way that are kind of blocking you.
Yeah. Okay, here's another interesting question. So when you look back over the many years of working with people, what has the breath taught you about being human?
About being human.
Human. Yeah.
The first thought I have is about yesterday, after I was frustrated about my computer. And I called up my son and I saw his wife, and she is a breath worker as well. And she laughed with me. And then because she laughed at me, and she said, it was just a computer. If I would have been you, I would have thrown it through the room. And then something in that made me so angry. And I started to say like, oh, and I can't stand it anymore. And I feel so frustrated. And I got really upset and I screamed. And you know what she said? Oh, thank you. You are mostly, you're so together. This makes you also very human.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I realized that the breathwork has done for me is that I have come to understand physically that in the end, no emotion is better or worse than another. They are all
emotions. All emotions are equal, right? No matter what it is.
They're all equal.
It's just an energy. Yeah.
The more I am in connection with my love side, I still remember Leonard Orr standing in front of us the first time that I met him on the stage, and he had his hands like white. And he said, you always will be carrying the enormous tension of the opposites of your own character, of your own personality. And he said, in the end, you are never in the middle. You're always correcting, like in an airplane. An airplane is also never level completely. It is always doing little bits like moving back, front and right and left, and that is middle. But the more I feel like more mastering, holding those opposite sides in myself, I feel less need to get very angry. And there was a moment a couple of months ago that I felt very irritated about a person, and I could feel physically, it felt so unpleasant physically. And what I did was I did something that Hal Stone always said to us: if you are angry over there, look at where you are having having that same behavior that is irritating you so much? So I searched and I found it like it was there. And then I can just sit there and say something like, please forgive me that I'm still not understanding completely. I'm breathing out and then.
Yeah. So now we're moving into a really juicy area that you and I both like. It's about safety, ethics, and responsibility around breath work. So the next question is, what do you feel makes breath work safe? And also, and what can make breath work unsafe? So if you put those two questions together.
I read lately, there was an article in an English paper about a guy who had done some breath work. And what he did with himself was he sat down a couple of times a day and he pumped himself with his breath up into a cathartic state till at the end he felt so cathartic and so out of order that he ran naked in the street and shot the police.
Wow.
Yeah, that's.
I think I did hear this. Yes, yes.
So if I eat one apple a day and keep the doctor away, that's fine. But when I go and start today to eat 100 apples, most probably my stomach would say, you have to spit that out, darling. There is a too much and there is a too little. It's something that moves there in between. And so the safety when we work with other people, I think it comes into existence in the moment that we have been in a group to learn about breath, about consciously connected the breath. And we are doing that live. We learn it live. When you are my teacher, you teach me and you watch me, how I'm taking in your teaching. And you watch me being a part of that group, because this group of pupils in your training will mirror me, Tilke, all my family members. There will some guy who will behave like my father, and there will be a woman who will behave like my mom, and there will be someone who behaves just as unnicely as one of my teachers. And I will react to that. And you will teach me about that's a projection, Tilke. You have to look inside what your reaction is and go there and comfort that inner reaction inside of you. And so you teach me about breathing. You teach me about clearing up my normal relationships, especially the ones with my family. And because I am a slow learner, most people are, we need a couple of years to do that. And when you do it properly, you teach me, you give me the opportunity also to know you, and so that I can give you as my teacher honest feedback, and you give me a still honest feedback about my moving there. And if you see my behavior still being unclear and flirtatious with a certain type of man in our training, you will tell me, Till, you will have to learn to hold your energy inside and not kind of scatter it around you. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So
that makes it safe. Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
That makes it safe.
That makes it safe. Yeah. I think safety is very important in breath work. You know, today's, I guess, world of so many different, different modalities of breath work, but different types, I guess, of breath work practitioners and what they believe. So I guess, when I look back at breath work, it definitely has evolved. And now there's more science as well, and there's more understanding of what happens physiologically. And I'd like to see more of that. I don't know about you, but I'd like to see more science go into what actually happens physiologically to us during a breathwork session. So when you look back to the early years of breathwork, when you look back at maybe rebirthing breathwork, what would you understand now differently to what was done back then, like looking at breathwork today? And, and I'm sure you've evolved a lot as a breathwork practitioner and facilitator.
What I see as the difference, in the beginning, we were so eager to explore and find out what was happening.
I guess it was new back then too, right? So
it was completely new, and we knew that it worked, but we didn't know how. And so we explored, and we were very, very curious, and we experimented. Sometimes we made mistakes. Then there was a whole period where there were more schools being established in the world that were teaching conscious connected breathing in a very proper way, in a good way, with a good foundation. Also about the psychological knowledge that you need to work with somebody. And what is happening right now is that people are fascinated because they can see and feel that breathing does something very special and has that capacity. But at the same time, they are infected by the fastness of the world today and the speed that everything needs to be moving in. And so they think Oh, with that breathing, we do that every day. It's so easy. We can learn that in 8 days. So this morning again, Matula sent us in the professionality work group of the IBF a website, and I opened it shortly before I saw you here. I thought, oh, another course.
I saw that as well, actually. I saw that one. Yeah.
8 days, maybe 20 hours or something, online, certified.
Wow.
Get your breathwork certification fast. Be paid fast. And I think
So, anything that I guess the public don't know is all these certifications, logos that people see, they're just people that just create their own little, little stamps. It's like, okay, well, so and so got accredited from a Kellogg's cornflakes box, or like, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. And I think the public need to be aware. This is one area that we're working on in Australia as I'm the current president of the Australian Breathwork Association. So we're doing a lot of social media subjects around teaching the public to ask questions of their practitioners, like how long have you trained? Where did you train? How long was the training? Because in Australia, as you know, it's 450 hours over 2 years, plus the group facilitator training of another 80 hours. And I know Global Professional Breathwork Alliance are the same with their 400 hours, etc. And I think a lot of people need to realize that, because there are a lot of people, maybe some have good intentions and others come from maybe monetary sort of interest more than the client, right? But anyway, so what do you feel breathwork facilitators need to be much more aware of today, in today's world? What do they need to be aware of?
Their own inner development, their own process.
Yeah.
I think that's an occupational hazard that we, from the first session we did. And if we decided we would like to do this professionally, then we are really obliged always keep evolving and developing ourselves as a human being.
Yes, I think it's important that we as breathwork practitioners stay current, I guess, with the latest research, the latest ethics, the latest standards. My experience, especially working as on the integrity committee with the International Breathwork Foundation, as well as my work with the Australian Breathwork Association, there still are some trainings out there that are so like this cathartic training, this really harming people and re-traumatizing people. So I think it's really important that breathwork practitioners evolve. And that's why I think it's fantastic that we have these amazing associations and foundations that we're all members of, that we all get to learn and teach each other and experience. I think you're right. I know for myself, doing this work, I need to also do work on myself as well at times, especially if I feel challenged with something. And I'm sure you've had it too, where you've kind of given, breathwork sessions to people. Maybe your own judgment comes in or your own ego comes in. And it's really important to sort of realize that and sort of be aware of that and how it can affect your client. And I know I've had some complaints with clients going to practitioners where the practitioner, makes the session about themselves, not about the client. And I think that can do a lot of harm.
Yeah. And John, sometimes there are moments that I have to get really personal with someone. I remember we had a guy, Belgian man, good man, but there was a lot of, he had a real rock backpack with strong whatever. And he came and he did our 3-year training. And every month he came for a private session from Belgium to see me here in Holland. After the training, he did an extra year. And then he did 2 years to become a trainer himself. And he still was coming. There was one part in the way he lived his life. When I heard him telling about it, that kept the same. There was no shift in there. And he was still suffering. So there was one morning that I expected him. And I was here sitting at my table waiting for the bell to ring. And I thought, oh my God, there he is again. And I could feel I'm tired of it. So we went upstairs into my office and we sat down and he started to tell and speak. And there was this moment and I thought, now I need to tell him. And I stood up from my chair and I stood behind it. And I said, I have to tell you this personally. This is not your therapist speaking. This is Tilke.
Yeah.
When you start to talk like this and it's always the same, it makes me so tired. And I'm getting very bored, and I'm also hopeless because I don't know what to do with it anymore. I don't know how to support you. And then he started to cry. I sat down, and while he cried, he said, does that mean that you don't want to work with me anymore? And I said, the moment that you show me your emotion, now I am in contact with you personally again. Now we can move on. And then the whole things started to shift.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then took us like maybe 4 or 5 more sessions. And suddenly he came back and he was like, he didn't tell that old story anymore. It was not necessary. He was not in that same suffering place.
Old narrative. Awesome. Are there things happening in the modern breathwork that concern you? Like being part of the professionalism team, being, with IBF, your observations of modern breathwork, things happening in the modern breathwork. What concerns you?
Some people learn in their training certain type of what they call interventions. And when I hear them speak about, and then I did this, they tell us something about the session they gave. And I did that intervention, and then all went wrong. And I said, why did you do that intervention? That particular intervention, touching someone, putting his legs up, whatever, some intervention. And the answer was because I learned it that way.
Yeah, right.
And then I saw he is not working with what is being shown to him. He's working in a little program, and the program has to be finished, but that might not fit the person that you're working with.
So not using any intuition, right?
Yeah, it is for me more like a new client is coming in, and the same client is coming in 2 weeks later, but then he's a different person. And I have to look at what he is offering me. There is another phenomenon being shown.
I think you said this, when you say there is trespassing happening in the field, what does that mean? Breathworkers are trespassing. What does that mean to you? Is that like what you just said now? Or?
But it belongs to, that is trespassing. That is doing something to someone without really deeply understanding why you're doing it. Sometimes you see people in a training and someone is, for example, they're still sitting up or they are already lying down. And then suddenly someone wants to tell the person that he's working with, you have to breathe more into your upper chest. So that your breast can unfold and the breast can open up and the whole heart space gets more space for your heart. And they put one hand here, and then 5 minutes later, that hand is still lying there. It's not doing anything anymore. It's just lying there, dead. Yeah. And so when you learn someone to touch someone and you tell them, you just have to tell them, can you feel that when you open your breathing and you make a real impulse in your in-breath, that there is something happening in your chest? Put your own hand for a moment on there and feel the movement. Then I am not doing it to them. They are doing it for themselves. That's different.
How can we go on?
Was that an answer?
Yeah, no, that's good. So this leads me on to how can facilitators avoid pushing, leading, or forcing a client into an experience? And I'm sure you've seen that too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that once we were in France in the conference, 2018, I think it was, and I was in one of those workshops.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly, in the middle of me lying there and starting up my breathing and beginning to feel, oh yeah, this is really starting to stream and my energy is flowing, and I was not thinking all that much. I was going into living what I was feeling. I was having a lot of felt experiences. And someone came with a fist pushing me right here underneath my breastbone in my stomach. Not just touching, but with 6 kilos. And I said, hey, that hurts. Yeah, but then I need to do this.
Wow.
Pushing went on. And then I said, please fuck off.
Wow.
And then the person said to me, you are getting angry. I said, yes, of course I'm getting angry. You're hurting me on purpose. Please stop and don't touch me again.
Yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you. But then again, I've experienced that at a conference.
But I was able to have them stop.
Yeah. And I think, in the breathwork field, especially with the IBF, we sort of came to conclusions of, when we are doing group breathwork sessions or people are doing workshops, is to really state whether there is touch or no touch, whether people want to be touched or not touched. So I think that's really important because we don't know what traumas people hold, what history they have, how much they're willing to share, especially, if it's a group session, which is different to, a private session. I think it's really important that the practitioners have boundaries as well, And especially not to lead a breathwork session into a cathartic state or into drama or whatever, because the thing that I totally understand is that the breath, as I said earlier on, has its own sort of magic and spirit, which will take people to where they need to go. And this was a lovely conversation I had when I went to the Swedish conference that Bo Wallström had done. And he really taught me a lot about just trusting the magic of the breath and the spirit of the breath without having to even, like you said earlier on, interjecting. We don't need to do that. What does it mean to truly honor the client's process? What does it mean to truly honor a client's process?
If my client is coming in, overlying issue in that moment is that he or she is telling me he has a difficulty in really connected with their spouse or husband. I can think all kinds of things, and I may be thinking that I'm seeing the truth. That is what they come in with. And so I will ask them if they can tell me, like give me an example what that looks like, what really, like a little happening. And then I start to go and ask, how do you feel in those moments? And they start to describe the feeling. And that's the moment where I ask them to start to breathe. And I say, recreate that memory. If you can think about it or look in your mind's eye, or maybe you can hear the noises that were there and the voices, what they were speaking. And maybe you can now start to feel in your body what it felt like. And then suddenly they move off. And now they are in their own memory from that moment. And it might be different, but now they are feeling. That is leading them towards the heart of the matter. Where is it happening? And sometimes ask them in that moment, when you feel that way, how old do you seem to feel? And then they go like 2.5 years old. And then that's not about the spouse any longer. That's about the parent of the mom or the dad or whoever, someone in the family. Now we have to have the core of the issue.
All right. How important is the facilitator's own personal work, maturity, and supervision? When we're looking at breathwork facilitators, how important is it for their own personal work? I know we touched on it a little bit before. Maturity and supervision. Like I know in Australia here, we encourage peer group supervision or even buddying up with another breathworker. How important is that for you, your experience?
Very, very important. Because for my own blind spots, I have a blind eye. Because that's why I call them a blind spot.
Yeah, so true, right?
But in a group, so like in my own peer group, where we exchange sessions, but we are living together for 9 days every year. Especially, that peer group is now 30 years old, so we know another. But in the beginning, the family projections were flying through the room all the time.
Yeah, I've experienced that.
Right now, we are exchanging sessions still throughout the year. And this week, for example, I had an exchange with Anne, the Australian Anne.
Oh, Anne Harrison.
That happened because she is also a little bit older, so she knows about getting older. And that is so comforting for me to have an exchange and then someone sitting there in front of me and asking me, but do you feel it like that? How is it exactly for you when you experience what is happening? So she's pinpointing me and I will be pinpointing her, but that's not the question now because you're asking, I am a facilitator for people. I work as a therapist and I need it that someone looks at me, pinpoints me at the points where I am unclear, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good to be able to have other peer support for that and for reflection, and growth. So can a facilitator take someone safely into territory they have not explored in themselves?
I doubt it.
I'm just thinking, I can't remember what country I was in, but I was working with an expat in this country and they were a Vietnam veteran. So they had gone to war in Vietnam and they were experiencing a lot of post-traumatic stress. And during the session, some of the stuff that they were sharing was, I cannot imagine it ever, what they were going through. And I was with a student, it was actually my student's case study. And, I've never really gone down that track. I've been very fortunate to have traveled and worked in war-torn countries and worked with all people of all walks of life. But what helped me at that moment was actually, I just started Googling about Vietnam, what they were going through. And I was able to sort of formulate some questions to the client while they were breathing every now and then, which kind of helped, the person get to that next stage and then able to do the next session. And I encourage my student to kind of do the same, as to go and learn about what happened on the ground there. But anyway, the guy completed the 10 sessions, and it really did help a lot. But it made me also then go down and start learning about post-traumatic stress and war and other topics like that, because it was a new area for me, like to understand it, to be able to know what kind of questions I could ask this person in order to support them as well. And I'm sure there's, stuff that I've not experienced that people have shared with me, but sometimes I feel like, I don't really need to answer everything. I don't have the answers for everything, but as long as I can hold a safe space for my client in order for them to release and to integrate. Yeah, it's interesting, and there's some cases that I probably won't take on too. I think I've, in the last 30 years, I've kind of realized maybe there's some things that, it's not for me to go and deal with. Maybe they need to find another practitioner that field.
What you are describing there, I know about my own experiences in the Second World War, because I was a child in that time. Our house, my whole city was, but I have never killed.
Yeah.
And I have worked with a person who has killed.
Same, yeah.
And there is, in him, there was so much guilt and also shame that he could not grasp the idea that that was a part in him that was trained to be a soldier, and that was not really him. And so probably people who did actually participate in the war, participate actively, they would need a therapist, a good therapist who knows about that experience inside themselves, I think, and I'm not quite sure.
Okay. What are some signs that a facilitator may need more support, training, or supervision? When you think back as a teacher now with your students, what are some signs you think?
I think a sure sign is when we, as the therapist, begin to notice that there is a certain area in our lives where we just malfunction.
I like that.
Or an area where we encounter a certain type of people that keeps irritating us or making us angry. Then something is happening. If that happens to me.
So it's activating something that's not right.
That triggers me in my normal daily life. I need some work.
Okay. How do we balance trust in the breath with professional responsibility and clear ethical boundaries?
So the more we, as the facilitator, as the therapist in that role, the more we understand and know the part in us that is called our inner child, the one that's carrying all the wounds that have been happening. The basic wounds happened in the first couple of years, and then afterwards it's just repetition in another form. So the more I am in contact with that inner child in me, because of her and knowing her so well, where she gets frightened. She gets frightened when I am on the verge of hurting someone. She gets frightened when she hears me making a harsh remark to somebody. There is an ethical boundary. My harsh remark doesn't have the place in my energy work, in my therapeutic work. My sexual energy or anything in that range of atmosphere does not have a place in there. And if that is an area in me where I am completely unclear, where I might even feel needy for more personal contact with my client, there is a big red line that should be there at least. And so that's inner work. So that is the therapist, the facilitator, the trainer. We need to work on all those areas of our lives so that we are safe inside with ourselves and that we know what it feels like to hurt somebody or surpass their boundaries. We have to know it not in our thinking. We have to know it in our bodies.
Yeah. So let's move now to breathwork today. So here we are in the new millennium, 2026. What do you think breathwork is becoming so popular now? Why now?
It seems to be a very fast possibility to feel better. But that is just like I can also drink a glass or smoke a cigarette or take some drugs. And then for a little while, I would feel better. But in order to really start to feel better, I have to learn how to better feel what's going on inside.
I guess it's about regulation, isn't it?
Regulation, but also the integrating the oldest wounds inside of us. That is something that never stops. That's my experience in my age.
What would you like the public to understand before choosing a breathwork facilitator or attending a session or a training? What would you say about that?
Does that therapist haven't had enough training themselves? Do you experience him or her as not just a friendly person, but a genuine friendly person? And if you are in his or her presence, is something inside of you feeling really safe?
Yeah, I agree. It's so important.
Yeah, safe. And safe in the sense of I'm going to my mental clothes. I'm going to take my mental clothes off, and I'm going to feel rather naked in here, mentally and emotionally. And if I'm doing that, will I still be safe? Can I feel really safe? And that is something. Yeah,
I agree. And I probably told you this story many years ago. I'd really opened up in some breathwork sessions, only to discover that the breathwork practitioner had divulged my personal experience to other people, and that really destroyed me. Yeah, this is probably one of the reasons why I am involved in professionalism and development and integrity committees and stuff, because it's so important, I think, to for breath workers to really hold space and to create safety. Number one, do no harm.
So I told you there have been a woman in my practice a longer time ago who also killed and was in jail for it. Big trauma. And I don't know how it happened, but we could move into a place where she could feel she might be forgiven. And there was a man who told me about beating his two sons with his belt. And it was like a ritual for him, getting into his anger and then pulling out the belt. And then we came to the point where he has deeply apologized to both his sons and told him that he was so afraid of not raising them into strong men, and that he, through our training, began to understand that strength is something else than force. I can tell you about it, but only because there is someone, but I'm not calling his name. And that is only when I would have a private supervision, I'd slip the name, but that was also in another safe environment. But actually, we need to trust that we not speak about the person, only like I had this case.
Yeah, generalizing. Do you feel there needs to be stronger professional standards, ethics, and training in the breathwork field?
Absolutely. Yeah. But the most important is that the people in the training develop an inner attitude of being harmless. And that's something, if you are the trainer and you see me behaving still harmful, you don't give me my diploma. You tell me, Tilke, stay with me a little longer.
You've got work to do, girl. Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I've experienced that with, because at the end of the day, we sign off our students, right? Like, whether they're capable. Yeah. And sometimes, I have in the past not given certificate to a few people because I don't think they were ready. They still had their demons to deal with.
I'll show you a book here. I put it on my desk.
Okay.
Because it was in David Montgomery's bookshelf a year ago, and I wrote down the title, and I only could get it secondhand. It was not in print anymore. It's written by a doctor, psychiatrist, in 1989. And he begins where he describes he is giving a session to a woman who is suddenly creeping over the floor, putting her head in his lap, radiating sexual wanting. And he feels himself on the verge of throwing all his ethical ideas overboard and using her.
Wow.
And he doesn't. He tells her to go back to her chair, and now they can work because she has a history of whatever. The day before yesterday, I wrote a letter to the publisher if they would be willing to reprint that book, because I think I've been speaking about it, and I think that Griet found it somewhere, and it looks like this.
Sex in the Forbidden Zone, when men in power abuse women's trust. Yeah.
Yeah. And he has done about 1,000 interviews with people around this whole subject. And the way he describes the psychological happenings in the man's mind, but also what's happening in the women's mind, it is amazing. It is really amazing, and it is so accurate. But when I tried to send the letter, it is printed by Harpers and Collins. The email address that they gave me nearly crashed my computer, so that was not working. And now I have to find out who else I can send that to. I can send you the title and the
Yeah, please.
because it is so worthwhile to understand more that there is centuries of upbringing of men and women in a certain way. And we mothers are also bringing up our sons. And if we keep bringing them up in a way that they get used to being taken care of in everything, and that they go out there and conquer the world, and that we will always be here to serve them and hold them and to comfort them in whatever way is possible. And we are also brought up that way, that is our task. But we both carry responsibility.
I've seen that in a lot of different cultures as well. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
What would you most like younger breathworkers to understand about this work? If you could tell young breathworkers something about this work, what would you like them to understand?
Breath brings back the life force, tangible. The conscious connected breath does that. But what it also does, it brings love, brings up anything unlike itself. So it brings up the love for life. And where my love for life has been diminished by my upbringing, and that's happened to everybody because we have to survive in the world and get some personality to drive a car and go to school and whatever. When the love for life really gets reignited inside of us, we encounter the thoughts, the opinion, the convictions that we carry. There we need to clean up. There's where the integration needs to happen. And that is a lifetime work.
Well said. Thank you. So after all these years of doing breath work and you're still at it, what do you feel is the heart of this work?
Love.
Love. Yeah.
Love. Going back to the original love, which is knowing about who we are.
Awareness.
Yeah.
So if people remember only one thing from our conversation, what would you love that to be?
That both you and I are still seeking not just an answer, seeking that original love inside ourselves that can't be thrown over.
Thank you.
Thank you.